What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So we had some massive E3 news yesterday. Something I didn't think I'd really see is happening. We talked about Sony, of course, not going to E3. Well, there's another big-time departure from this convention, trade show, fan event. It's hard to say what E3 even is anymore. And we're going to go over why this is such a big deal and why we could be seeing the decline now of E3 going forward. We'll talk a bit about that. And then also, we do appear to be in the longest drought for a Nintendo Direct as of now. And we're not really sure when a Direct is going to happen, but it does appear to be getting to a lot of gamers online, and we'll be talking about all of that and more today, guys. As always, if you enjoy these videos, make sure that like button helps out a ton. And if you're brand new here, hit that red subscribe button down below with the bell icon on. That way you can stay up to date with all of the gaming news going on in the gaming world. We're actually going to start today with EA, Need for Speed, Criterion Games, and Ghost Games, as it looks like EA is going to be moving that franchise around a bit. Specifically, they're going to be moving around Need for Speed. We just had Need for Speed Heat last year, and I actually liked the game. I thought it was pretty fun, and strangely, when it came out, there weren't any microtransactions in it, although one was kind of shifted in that unlocks, or at least unhides, I guess you'd say, all of the icons on the map. It's not like egregious or anything, but it is still there, and it was added after release, but it's still a pretty fun game overall. Nothing revolutionary, kind of a callback to like Underground or Carbon, but it looks like EA wants to move that away from Ghost Games and have them kind of run support for Frostbite. According to EA, the engineers there at Ghost Games would do a better job helping out with Frostbite across several other studios, and they're moving EA's Need for Speed over to Criterion Games. They, of course, have done several Burnout games. They also did Need for Speed Hot Pursuit, the more recent one, and then Need for Speed Most Wanted, again, the more recent one, that one from 2012. So they have had experience with these games, and generally when they do them, they tend to be a little more arcade-like. So I'm not sure when the next Need for Speed will come out. I assume it's just going to end up being a next generation, like a Series X and a PS5 game, and that could be neat to see. Hopefully that means they get a better frame rate than what they had in Heat, and they can get a very smooth experience, but we'll see, probably in the next couple of years, I would say. Also, we'll be talking really quickly about PAX East once again, as if you are going, you can play The Wonderful 101 on the Switch. It appears that Platinum Games will be making the trip out there to Boston to not only show off the game on the Switch, playable versions and demos that you can try out. They'll also be holding their own panel there, which, yes, the Switch version was pretty much ready to go, right? I mean, we kind of figured that when they put up the $50,000 goal. This Kickstarter seemed to be specifically for the PS4 version, and then I guess the PC version along the way, and most likely this was going to happen either way. Maybe as a way to drum up some hype and some interest, but that Kickstarter exploded like overnight. So this is more of I guess just a tour just to show the game in its playable state now and get everyone excited for April when it ships. Also, Persona 5 Scramble is due out next week, and Famitsu did have a review score for it and some little bits of information that you can check up on. The biggest one is that the story appears to be roughly 45 hours long, which, while not as long obviously as Persona 5, for a game that's more action-oriented, that's actually pretty good. It appears that there is quite a bit of story in this game, maybe something you noticed that during the demo, which the reason I didn't play as much of the demo is because I didn't really know what was going on. I can't read Japanese text, so I was a little lost, but the gameplay itself does seem pretty good, and people were kind of surprised based on just how much was to this game as opposed to what they maybe thought going into an action beat-em-up style game, a warrior style game. A little different here. Now, Famitsu gave it a 36 out of 40, which actually places it pretty much at the top of other Persona spin-offs, which would put it close to Persona 4 Arena, also getting a 36 out of 40, and they pretty much just like the game. So that's good news. Now it's out next week in Japan, and while you can technically grab it on the Switch because it's region-free, of course there's no English options, so it's going to be a bit harder if you don't speak or understand Japanese text. But hopefully we'll get an announcement maybe over the summer that we can check this game out, hopefully getting localized at the end of this year or early next year. Either way, though, looking good for Persona 5 Scramble so far. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get in the bigger stuff. Let's start with E3 2020. right away because, of course, we talked about how Sony will not be there a second year in a row, and that, again, brings up concern around the event completely. Is it losing its importance, its relevancy? I do think it is, with how social media is now, where these companies can just reach out, announce something, and everyone sees it immediately, and, of course, talking to retailers and developers and all that can also be done pretty easily now as well. But still, people really enjoy the show because there are generally big announcements there. Well, something that I really didn't think I would see, kind of out of nowhere even. Geoff Keighley's not going. And you might be thinking, oh, okay, that's fine. Well, no, Geoff Keighley's been there since the thing started, 25 years ago? I remember watching him on G4 TV as he went around and interviewed different publishers and developers, getting us all of the information. He's been there for a while. And this is actually a statement he put out on Twitter saying, "For the past 25 years, I have attended every electronic entertainment expo. Covering, hosting, and sharing E3 has always been a highlight of my career, not to mention a defining part of my career. I've debated what to say about E3 2020. While I want to support the developers who will showcase their work, I also need to be open and honest with you, the fans, about precisely what to expect from me. I have made the difficult decision to decline to produce E3 Coliseum. For the first time in 25 years, I will not be participating in E3. I look forward to supporting the industry in other ways and at other events in the future." What's interesting, he did say he will be at Gamescom and holding the whole event there, so he's not going to do E3, but he will be doing Gamescom. Now, he was questioned, and I will give a lot of credit here to Geoff. Everyone had questions, and he said he will do his best to answer, but he said things like, a ton of factors, I just don't really feel comfortable participating, given what I know about the show as of today, and then also going on to saying, I think E3 needs to become more digital and global. It's a brand that means a lot to people, but it shouldn't just be a show floor. Now, I do believe that E3 is confused themselves. They haven't really changed, and this isn't the first time we've heard that E3 needs to evolve or change. Remember, Sean Layden said this, of course, before Sean Layden left Sony, but Sean Layden kind of alluded to this as well, that E3 really hasn't changed much with the times. It's losing its big advantage, which was to get the word out there and get in front of millions of people. Now, these companies who do that without that, they don't need E3, and it does cost a lot of money to go. We're talking for some of these companies that have big booths on the floor, tens of millions of dollars. And you have to really consider, is it worth spending what could be a budget for an entire game? I mean, consider that. You're spending a budget for an entire game to go to E3 to show off your game that you could just show off in a Nintendo Direct, a State of Play, Inside Xbox, or just put it on Twitter and YouTube. You kind of see why we're kind of looking at E3 as it's a cool event, but is it a necessary event? And even Geoff Keighley is looking at this, and it appears that he's not thrilled with even how it's running behind the scenes, kind of alluding here to that. And you know what? Geoff could probably run a better event himself. He has the experience. He's been there since it's basically started. And like I said, he watched him on TV for G4 doing it, and I think with how much experience he's gained for the Game Awards, yeah, let Geoff go run an E3. Let him do his own event for that. And of course, he'll be doing Gamescom as well. This was surprising. This popped up and I said, wow, there is E3. We might, in I'll say several years, say 5 or 6, there could be a point in time where there is a fascinating documentary that comes out, right? And it's literally the decline or the fall of E3, because I think there is a lot of stuff right now going on behind the scenes that would just be very interesting to hear about, but can't come out yet. Next up, let's stick with E3 here, as there was this weird leak that took place. Now, we've talked about E3, the ESA, and leaks before when they decided to just leak everyone's information who went from the media and press and influencers all in one nice little notepad or Excel spreadsheet and put it out there to the world for everyone to see addresses and phone numbers. That was a whole thing then, but apparently, they accidentally opened up part of their website to where you could see participating partners for E3 2020, which meant all the companies that would be participating in the event on the show floor. And you can kind of see the list here. What's odd about this, though, is there are companies that are missing that had some people thrown into a panic. Nintendo and Microsoft are not on that list. However, we know Microsoft will be there, and we also know Nintendo will be there, as Doug Bowser himself said so in, January during an interview. So it was very strange, and there was a lot of confusion yesterday, but the ESA even had to come out and kind of talk about how a lot of partners have committed that are not on this list. This list is currently incomplete, but this is what they had to say. Several leading video game companies have already committed to participating in E3 2020, including Xbox, Nintendo, Ubisoft, Bethesda, Softworks, Sega, Capcom, Square Enix, Take-Two Interactive Software, Bandai Namco Entertainment, America Inc., and Warner Bros. Games, among others. We look forward to participating in E3 2020. It is one of many ideal venues for us this year to interact with people in a social and immersive environment. Every year, we base our approach to E3 on the content we have to share. Now, I think the reason people saw this and there was some confusion, some knee-jerk reaction, is because Sony's not going, so couldn't Nintendo just say, I really need E3? Yeah, I think they will eventually do that. I really do. I think eventually Nintendo will say, we don't really need to go to E3. We have Treehouse and all that, and that's great, but they could do Treehouse from anywhere, couldn't they? I mean, they could. They could just say, hey, we're going to do Treehouse, we're going to call in developers, and you guys will have some time on camera while we do these streams for the next 4 days, and of course we'll run a direct. Yeah, they could. They could even, I think when Mario Odyssey or Switch was launching, remember they had the bus that went around and did these Switch tours. Even leading up to the Switch coming out, they just had events. I went to one, I believe in Washington, D.C., and got to see the Switch and play games ahead of time, and that was pretty fun. I don't really think, again, Nintendo or some of these companies need it. That's why people look at this and say, well, there you go. I guess they're not going. It just took that much to get to that point. So that's kind of how on edge I think this whole E3 thing is. But no, look forward. Nintendo will be there, Microsoft will be there, Sony will not, and then several other smaller companies will also be there during E3. Not this year's not the year where a bunch of companies just start disappearing from that show floor and the card, but eventually I think that time will come. Next up, let's talk about this Nintendo Direct drought, because it is getting to people. I mean, we have fake Twitter accounts out here posting that a Nintendo Direct is happening this week, and it's getting insane amounts of likes and retweets because people are just jumping on it immediately, that it's finally a thing, it's finally happening, and then you realize that they completely misspelled Nintendo's username and it's not even verified and there's terrible images on it. It's an obvious fake, but because people are so excited for the idea of a Direct, they're willing to jump on it right away. And that, of course, has to do with us right now being in seemingly the longest drought between Directs, with the last one taking place September 4th. Which means, as pointed out even on Reddit, that it's been over 159 days since the last Direct. Couple that with the idea that, well, if you look at 2020 for Nintendo, the only game that's dated right now is Animal Crossing. We know Xenoblade is coming, and we assume it's going to be a May or June release, but that's the key word. We're assuming. The big announcement recently is that some games will be going to the Super Nintendo and Nintendo Online Service for Nintendo's okay offerings, but that's the biggest problem there. Nothing impactful. What's after Animal Crossing? Well, if we get to that point without a Direct, who knows? And that's kind of the issue right now. And I think that, alongside of this just being a very slow 2020 right now, I mean, the first month and a half, there's been nothing. I can't find a single person really talk about DBZ Kakarot on the podcast or other places. So that's how you know it's slow. There's just really nothing coming out and people just aren't interested in what is there. This time last year, we were talking about Devil May Cry 5, we were talking about Resident Evil 2, and we were talking about Kingdom Hearts 3. It's a bit of a contrast from now to then, right? So all of this together, yes, people are really looking towards a Nintendo Direct, but I will say, there should be one before Animal Crossing, right? I think most of us assume that, but man, is it getting tough for people right now. Hoping beyond hope that a Nintendo Direct will be announced at any time. Most likely there won't be one this week, and hey, what's the keyword now? What's the phrase now? There's always next week for a Nintendo Direct, right? Monday will eventually come, and then disappointment will probably follow. Most likely. But what's also stopping Nintendo from not even announcing it? What's stopping them from just dropping a 15 to 20 minute mini Nintendo Direct on the way up to E3? That's also very possible, so keep that in mind. Also, I have a feeling Nintendo has heard you guys, and it will be very interesting to see if they play around with it like they have done before, where they drop a chibi robo that's on fire or something, because every time they post on Twitter, every response below that is, where's that Nintendo Direct? What happened to the Direct? So yeah, Nintendo, drop something and just mess around with the fan base, just for some fun. Let's get Chibi Robo on Fire, version 2, or maybe even do something with F-Zero. Hey, F-Zero could actually be relevant, could do something then. And then our last bit of news, talk about the Nintendo PlayStation, as it has now gone up for sale. We're for auction. It's been up for auction for like the next 3 weeks or so, and you can see the page here, sitting right around $15,000 or so. It's kind of been jumping up throughout the day. You're gonna see it move quite a bit as we get closer to the end of this auction period, as most things tend to do, but they're looking for quite a bit of money, I think, here, and I'm going to be curious to see if they get to that point. There have been a lot of rumors around how much money they were looking for, how much they've turned down, whether it's over 6 figures, and this is a rare piece, and the fact that it's just up for auction over the next 3 weeks, it's going to get a lot of eyes on it, and that's the biggest thing to me right now, because we've seen sealed games go for tens of thousands of dollars, no problem, and those are just sealed games that are rated very highly. This is like a one-of-a-kind item right now. There could be others out there somewhere. I mean, this was found in someone's attic, so I guess you never really know. But if this is it, this should, you would assume, go for over 6 figures, no problem. I'm thinking, looking at this, I'm going to take a guess, and feel free to do so as well down in the comments. Between $150,000 to $200,000 is where I think this is going to end up. And that's crazy to think about, considering whoever buys this probably is not going to play it. It's just going to go up on a shelf, and they'll kind of stand back and look at it and go, I got it. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This one is from Flip, saying they could have grabbed Final Fantasy 6 or Chrono Trigger. You're assuming Nintendo didn't try and that Square would have allowed it. Yeah, I mean, you know, you can always dream, right? I think they could grab Final Fantasy. I do think you're right about Chrono Trigger, though. Chrono Trigger probably will be sold separately at some point. I could see that. Remember, they put it on Steam. Everyone hated it. Then they kind of fixed it up, and people are like mid on it now. But they could do that, and that's kind of where the issue comes in here with their idea around what Virtual Console should turn into. It doesn't quite go all the way, because you still have like the Sega classics that pop up on the eShop. You still have the Neo Geo games that pop. You still have the arcade archives that pop up. You still have games that you just buy, right? That's kind of the issue we run into with the idea around a subscription service for these older games, is they don't always all work out and can fit under this one umbrella. Square will surely sell Chrono Trigger separately, and I don't think they would want to limit its sales potential by just putting it in a subscription service, and that's kind of where the planning and the idea that Nintendo has for this comes up a bit short. But hey, I mean, if Chrono Trigger popped up for 20 bucks, yeah, that thing's gonna sell like crazy. And you know, it's a good game, so I get it. And ladies and gentlemen, let's go do here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit the like button, really helps out. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about today, whether it is this big departure from E3. Geoff Keighley not going to E3, that is a big deal. As like I said, he's been there since the show's been around, and the fact that he's not going really tells you, I think, how relevant and how important this show is now. It's losing it. It's losing its relevancy and how important it is in the industry right now. And then also, what about this Nintendo Direct? Drought, are you someone who is just like, you're fiending for this Direct? You're all over Twitter. You're looking everywhere, hoping that eventually it gets announced. Let me know, when do you think it'll happen? Thanks, guys, for watching, and I'll see you next time.